Ethan Cole sat stiffly in the small shuttle, staring at the bright stars streaking past the viewport. His fingers tapped nervously against his lap. He was a human diplomat, trained to handle tense negotiations, but nothing in his career had prepared him for today. The Valari Empire, a civilization of alien elegance and strict tradition, was waiting. Ethan had been sent to secure a trade and cultural agreement that could benefit both species. For weeks he had studied their customs, their language, even the small gestures that indicated respect. He thought he was ready. Yet as the shuttle descended toward the sprawling city planet of Viral, he felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. Towering crystalline structures reflected the sun in thousands of colors. Flying vessels zipped like silver fish through the sky, and at the center of it all was the Valari Palace, gleaming with a light that seemed almost alive. "Cole, focus," said Captain Mira Valen, seated across from him. She was his commander, sharp-eyed and practical, always 2 steps ahead of him. "Remember, this is diplomacy. Be careful with your words." Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, Captain. I've studied their protocols." You've studied. That doesn't mean you understand them," Mira interrupted. Her gaze was calm but warning. "Just keep your mouth closed until someone asks a direct question." Ethan sighed. Mira was right. Humans were simple in comparison to the Valari. They spoke honestly, without the layers of protocol and expectation that aliens demanded. One careless word here could ruin months of negotiation, or worse, a lifetime of misunderstanding. The shuttle touched down gently on a landing pad and the ramp extended. Ethan stood, straightened his jacket, and took a deep breath. The palace gates opened, revealing a corridor lined with Valari attendants, tall, elegant figures with shimmering skin and eyes that seemed to glow faintly. Every step felt ceremonial. Every gaze seemed to weigh him, examine him, decide his worth. Finally, he reached the grand hall. The room was enormous, filled with glowing patterns in the floor and ceiling. At the far end, a figure stood waiting, Princess Zyrna, heir to the Valari Empire. She was more beautiful than Ethan had imagined. Her skin glimmered with soft silver hues. Her eyes were deep pools of violet, and her posture radiated authority. Every gesture seemed deliberate, every motion perfectly poised. Ethan's heart raced. He reminded himself, "Stay calm, stay polite." Princess Zyrna's eyes fixed on him as she approached. She smiled lightly, a smile that was both formal and strangely warm. "Welcome, human," she said, her voice melodious, almost like a song. "I am Princess Zyrna. The Empire is honored by your visit." Ethan bowed, following the formal human style he had practiced. "Your Highness, it is an honor to be here. I am Ethan Cole, representing the United Earth Alliance." The princess inclined her head. "We have observed humans closely. You are different, and yet curious, perhaps too curious for your own good." Ethan chuckled nervously. "I suppose curiosity is part of being human, Your Highness. We like to understand." A small laugh escaped Zyrna's lips. It was unexpected, and Ethan felt a flutter of relief. Maybe this wouldn't be so difficult after all. The ceremony began. Other dignitaries filed in, some whispering in alien tongues, others bowing and presenting gifts. Ethan followed the protocol, answering questions and exchanging polite words. Every move was calculated, every smile measured. Then came the moment that would change everything. Zyrna turned to him, her violet eyes shining with a strange intensity. "Tell me, Ethan Cole," she said, her voice low and direct, "if a situation arises where you must stand by someone you respect deeply, would you do so without hesitation?" Ethan blinked. He thought carefully. The Valari valued honesty, yes, but he also needed to be careful not to promise something he didn't fully understand. I would," he said cautiously. "I would stand by someone I respect." The room froze. Whispers echoed through the hall. Ethan did not understand the reaction at first. He looked at Zyrna. Her face had changed. Her eyes widened, a mixture of shock and delight shining in them. "By the stars," she murmured. He said it. "He chose me." Ethan froze. "Chose you?" he asked, confused. I didn't choose anything. I just answered your question." But the Valari attendants around him gasped, and whispers turned into murmurs of astonishment. One of the older dignitaries, Ambassador Rethal, stepped forward. His eyes were sharp, his voice measured. "Your Highness, the human has spoken the words of union. In our culture, this is a formal bond, a promise of lifelong partnership." Ethan's stomach dropped. Wait, lifelong partnership? I didn't mean that. I was just— Princess Zerna held up a hand, silencing him. Her expression was unreadable for a moment. Then a smile, almost mischievous, curved her lips. No, human. You spoke true words. You have chosen to stand by me. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. His mind raced. This was not in any diplomatic manual. This was not part of any training. Somehow, in one innocent answer, he had accidentally proposed to an alien princess. Captain Mira Valen stepped forward, her voice tight with urgency. Cole, you do realize what you just said, don't you? Yes, Captain, Ethan said, panic rising in his chest. I think I just— proposed? Zerna tilted her head, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. You do not understand, human. That is exactly what you did. The hall erupted into murmurs and whispers. Some dignitaries bowed deeply. Others glanced nervously at one another. Ambassador Rathal cleared his throat. Your Highness, the human must now follow the customs of union. He cannot simply walk away. It is considered dishonorable. Ethan's eyes widened. Walk away? I wasn't planning to— Wait, what? Zerna's smile softened almost imperceptibly. You have entered our world, human. You have spoken our words. You have chosen me. Ethan felt sweat form on his brow. He had expected tense negotiations, cultural misunderstandings, maybe a few awkward dinners. He had not expected to become entangled in intergalactic romance by accident. Captain Mira Valen pinched the bridge of her nose. This is going to be complicated, she muttered. Ethan swallowed hard, trying to think of a solution. Your Highness, Princess, I think there has been a misunderstanding. In human culture, what I said was polite, but it was not a proposal. I am honored by your attention, but I cannot— Zerna's eyes flashed. Silence, human. You speak with words, yet you do not feel their weight. You have said it, and it is done. You will not leave until the bond is acknowledged and respected. Ethan blinked. He wanted to argue, but something in her gaze stopped him. There was no anger, no threat, only a quiet certainty. A certainty that he had never encountered before. Ambassador Rathal approached, bowing slightly. Perhaps we can guide the human through the customs of union, he suggested, his voice careful. It is traditional. It is expected. It will preserve honor. Ethan felt trapped. He looked at Captain Valen, who shrugged helplessly. Welcome to Viral, Cole. Hope you're ready to not leave. For a moment, the shuttle and distant stars felt like a lifetime away. He had come here to negotiate peace, to build bridges between species. Instead, he had stumbled into a tradition he did not understand, a promise he had not meant to make, and a princess who would not let him leave. Ethan Cole sat in the private chamber of the Valari Palace, staring at the smooth, glowing walls. The light seemed to pulse softly, almost as if the palace itself were alive and observing him. He rubbed his temples. Somehow he had turned a simple diplomatic visit into what could only be called an intergalactic engagement. Captain Mira Valen stood near the door, her arms crossed, her face tight with irritation. Cole, you really did it this time. One phrase, one sentence, and you've enraged a royal empire. I didn't mean to, Ethan groaned. I just answered a question. I didn't propose to anyone. Mira's eyes narrowed. Well, congratulations, you did, and now you can't leave until it's acknowledged, whatever that means in their culture. Ethan leaned back in the chair. Acknowledged? What does that even involve? Mira shrugged. I don't know. That's why I'm here, to make sure you don't do something else that makes it worse. The door opened, and Princess Zerna entered. Her presence filled the room, elegant and commanding as always. But there was a fire in her eyes now, a mixture of anger, confusion, and curiosity. You will stay, she said, her voice firm, leaving no room for argument. Ethan raised his hands in surrender. Princess, I respect you, I really do. But I cannot stay long like this. In human culture, what I said was polite, yes, but it was not a proposal. Zerna's lips pressed together. She took a few steps closer, her violet eyes flashing. You misunderstand, human. Words are not just words here. They carry weight, meaning, and consequence. You have chosen me. You will not leave until this is understood. Ethan swallowed. He had been trained to handle high-pressure negotiations, but this was different. He was not negotiating trade or alliances. He was negotiating his freedom from a misunderstanding that had just become official. I swear, Princess, I didn't mean it, he said, voice urgent. I respect your culture, your customs, everything. But I cannot accept something I never intended. Zhirna's eyes softened slightly, but her tone remained firm. Intent does not matter. Your words carry power. And now you are here. You cannot walk away. You will learn human whether you like it or not. Ethan sighed, feeling trapped. So, what now? Zhirna gestured to the floor. You will remain in the palace. You will learn our customs. You will participate in ceremonies. And perhaps, in time, you will understand the meaning of what you have said. Ethan glanced at Mira, who gave a small shrug. Welcome to Viral, Cole. Consider yourself temporarily detained. Over the next few hours, Ethan was introduced to a series of rituals and customs. The palace staff moved with graceful precision, explaining the significance of every bow, every gesture, every phrase. Ethan tried his best to follow along, but every movement felt awkward. Every word sounded foreign. Princess Zhirna watched him carefully, sometimes silently, sometimes offering corrections with a sharpness that reminded Ethan why she was the heir to an empire. Yet, despite her sternness, there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes whenever he stumbled. At one point, she handed him a ceremonial robe, woven with threads that shimmered like starlight. Put this on, she instructed. It is customary for your presence at the upcoming gathering. Ethan examined it nervously. Okay, but it's very shiny. Zhirna's eyebrow lifted. Shiny is not the word, human. It is majestic. You will wear it properly or you will offend your hosts. Ethan fumbled as he tried to don the robe. The fabric slipped through his fingers and he ended up twisting it awkwardly around his shoulders. Zhirna's lips twitched and she let out a small laugh, soft but genuine. You are different, she said. No human has ever tried so hard and yet failed so thoroughly. Ethan chuckled nervously. I suppose that's me in a nutshell? Zhirna's smile faded as she studied him more closely. Perhaps, she said. Or perhaps it is that humans see the world in ways we cannot imagine. That is intriguing. The hours passed and Ethan was escorted to the Grand Library, a vast hall filled with glowing scrolls and floating books. Zhirna had ordered that he study Velari culture, history, and etiquette. While he read, he discovered the depth of their civilization, complex politics, advanced technology, and philosophies that blended logic with artistry. But the more he learned, the more he realized the challenge ahead. How could he respect her culture without getting trapped in customs he did not fully understand? How could he survive the next weeks, months, without offending anyone? That night, Ethan sat alone in his chamber, staring out at the twin moons of Viral. He thought about his home, Earth. How simple it had seemed. Humans, despite their flaws, had honesty, warmth, and humor. Here, every gesture had layers, every word carried hidden meaning. A soft knock at the door startled him. Zhirna entered, her robes flowing behind her. She did not sit, did not smile. She stood silently watching him. You think you can leave, she said finally, her voice low, almost a whisper. But you cannot. You chose me. You cannot walk away from choice, human. Ethan rose, trying to remain calm. Princess, I never chose anything. I said words I did not. I cannot. Zhirna stepped closer. You speak quickly, but your heart speaks truth. You respect honor. You fear wrongness. That is human. But here, fear does not free you. You must stay. You must learn. And perhaps you must change. Ethan blinked. Change? I don't even know where to start. Zhirna's violet eyes softened just a little. You start by living here, by seeing, by understanding, and by standing beside me, whether you think you chose it or not. He sank back into a chair, realizing the truth. For now, he was stuck. Not because of force, not because of threats, but because of words and culture and pride. He had been ensnared by misunderstanding, and the only way forward was to navigate the labyrinth of Velari society. Over the next days, Ethan struggled to adapt. Meals were formal and delicate, with flavors and textures he could barely identify. Conversations were layered with meaning, requiring careful listening and thoughtful response. Every misstep brought small reprimands from Zhirna, or whispers from the attendants. Yet something unexpected happened. Ethan began to notice moments of warmth. A smile from Zhirna when he attempted a difficult ritual, a soft chuckle when he mispronounced a ceremonial phrase. Even Ambassador Rethal, the stern advisor, showed subtle signs of respect when Ethan offered practical solutions to palace problems. One evening, while walking through the palace gardens under the twin moons, Zhirna spoke quietly. Humans are strange, she said. So simple, yet they see what others overlook. You see truth without filters. You help without needing glory. Ethan looked at her, surprised. I just try to be honest. That's all. She tilted her head.
Perhaps honesty is rare.
Perhaps it is strength. For a moment, the tension between them eased. The fire in her eyes remained, but it was tempered by curiosity. Ethan realized that despite the misunderstanding, despite the anger and cultural traps, Jirna was beginning to see him as more than a human guest. Still, the challenges remained. Nobles whispered about the human who had dared to speak boldly to the princess. Some wondered if Zirna's judgment was clouded. Some questioned if a human could ever truly respect the Valari way. Ethan worried, not just for himself, but for the fragile alliance he had been sent to build. One mistake here could end not only his freedom, but also the trust between two species. But Jirna's words echoed in his mind. You must stay. You must learn. And perhaps you must change. And Ethan realized that for all his training, all his knowledge of diplomacy, this would be his greatest challenge yet. Not negotiations, not treaties, not protocol, but surviving the scrutiny and expectations of a princess who would not let him go. By the time the twin moons rose high in the sky, Ethan understood one thing clearly. This was no longer just a diplomatic mission. It was a test of character, patience, and courage. And somewhere deep inside he felt a flicker of excitement. Because humans, he reminded himself, had a way of surviving even the strangest, most impossible situations. Days passed in the grand palace of Viral, and Ethan Cole found himself slowly sinking into the strange rhythm of Valari life. Each morning, he would rise before the twin suns and attend lessons in culture, history, and etiquette. Each evening he would walk through the gardens or quiet halls, trying to remember every gesture, every phrase that Princess Jirna expected him to follow. He still stumbled. Often. One morning, Jirna appeared in the training hall, her robes flowing like liquid silver, eyes sharp as a hawk. Today we begin with something simple, she said. You will learn the art of greeting with respect and honor. Ethan blinked at the elaborate series of hand gestures, head tilts, and foot placements. Simple, sure. I've got this. Jirna raised an eyebrow. Do not underestimate our ways, human. What you call simple can make or break a relationship here. For the next hour, Ethan tried to follow the precise movements. He bowed too deeply, tilted his head the wrong way, and even stepped on the edge of his robe, nearly tripping. Jirna sighed. You humans are curious creatures, she said, her tone softening just slightly. You are clumsy with our rules, yet your determination is admirable. Ethan chuckled, brushing imaginary dust off his robe. I guess clumsy determination is part of my charm. Jirna allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps, but charm does not excuse ignorance. Later that day, Ethan wandered into the palace gardens, hoping to escape the lessons for a moment. The gardens were vast, filled with plants that shimmered in the twin sun's light and streams that glowed faintly. The air smelled faintly of flowers that did not exist on Earth, yet somehow felt familiar. He found Jirna sitting by a fountain, her violet eyes staring at the water. You are thinking too much, she said without looking at him. Ethan sat beside her. I'm trying not to, but everything here is so different. Every gesture, every word, it has meaning. I don't want to offend anyone. Jirna's gaze finally met his. And yet you do not hide your thoughts. You do not pretend, that is, human, he laughed softly. I try to be honest. Sometimes too honest. That honesty is rare, she said. Most here speak with words that hide what they feel. You speak and act without fear of judgment. It is fascinating. Ethan felt a strange warmth. He had expected anger or irritation, maybe even scorn. Instead, Jirna's attention was calm, curious even, appreciative. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Jirna spent hours together. Not formal lessons, but walking through the palace, exploring the gardens, talking about their worlds. He told her about Earth, about human cities, food, festivals, and humor. She told him about Viral, about art, music, and the traditions that shaped every moment of their lives. One evening, while watching the twin moons rise over the palace, Jirna spoke softly. You humans are strange. You do not have our beauty, our grace, or our centuries of tradition. Yet you see what we overlook, Ethan smiled. We notice things because we want to understand. That's part of being human. We find meaning in small things. Laughter, kindness, honesty. Those are our strengths. Zhurna's violet eyes widened slightly. Strength, yes. Perhaps that is true. Humans are small, fragile. Yet you endure. You persist. That is remarkable. Ethan felt a surge of pride mixed with amusement. So I'm remarkable just for surviving daily palace life? She laughed softly, a sound like wind through crystal leaves. Yes, and for standing here talking to me without fear. The conversation changed something between them. Zhurna, who had been fiery and proud, began to see Ethan as more than a guest. Ethan, who had been terrified of offending her, began to understand her as more than a princess bound by duty. One afternoon, Ethan found himself in the palace workshop. Zhurna had brought him there to observe artisans creating delicate sculptures that floated in the air, glowing faintly with energy. These sculptures are our history, she explained. Each piece tells a story, a moment in time. We honor our ancestors through creation. Ethan watched as the artisans moved with skill and precision. It's incredible, he said. It's like the story is alive. Zhurna nodded. Humans do not always see the value in patience and precision. Yet you notice small details. That is a rare gift. Ethan smiled. I guess humans notice what's important to them, and I think I'm noticing you, princess. Zhurna's eyes flickered. You notice me? She asked, her tone cautious but curious. Yes, Ethan said honestly. You are unlike anyone I've ever met, and I've met a lot of people. She studied him for a long moment, then looked away. Perhaps humans are not as simple as I thought. Perhaps you have something to teach us, and perhaps I have something to learn from you. Their connection deepened over the following weeks. Zhurna began including Ethan in private discussions with her advisors, not as a subject to instruct, but as a participant. He offered ideas, solutions, and sometimes humor that broke the tension in ways Valari culture never could. Ambassador Rethel observed quietly, skeptical at first. But slowly he began to see that Ethan's human perspective offered fresh insight. Problems that had seemed impossible suddenly had solutions, and negotiations that were stagnant began to move forward. One evening, as they walked through a garden illuminated by the soft glow of bioluminescent plants, Zhurna stopped. She looked at Ethan with an intensity he had come to recognize, the mixture of pride, curiosity, and challenge. You have changed something here, she said. Not just in the palace, but in me. Humans are unpredictable and yet, perhaps necessary. Ethan felt his heart beat faster. Necessary? He asked. Yes, she said softly. You remind me that choice is more than duty, that life is more than expectation, that feeling something for another being is powerful. Ethan swallowed, realizing that he was beginning to feel the same. Zhurna, once distant and intimidating, had become someone he admired, respected, and perhaps cared for. But their growing closeness also carried tension. Some nobles whispered that the princess was allowing a human to influence her judgment. Some wondered if the empire's heir had lost focus, risking centuries of tradition for, what, curiosity? Fascination. Ethan felt the pressure. He wanted to protect Zhurna not by hiding, but by showing respect. He began to approach every lesson, every conversation with care, honesty, and humility. And slowly, Zhurna began to trust him. One night, under the twin moons, she turned to him quietly. You are not like others, she said. You do not fear me. You do not flatter me. You are honest. That is why I do not let you leave. Because you are needed here. Because you see me as I am, not as a crown. Ethan's throat tightened. Princess, I never intended to. You do not choose the bond, she interrupted softly. It is the bond that chooses you. And you have already begun to learn, already begun to understand. Ethan realized that what he had once considered a mistake, a misused phrase, a cultural blunder, was now a bridge between worlds. He was no longer merely a diplomat. He was a student, a partner, and perhaps a friend. Days turned into weeks, and their time together deepened. Zhurna would challenge him, tease him, and sometimes scold him, but always with a subtle respect that made Ethan strive to be better. And slowly he learned to navigate not just her culture, but the delicate art of understanding someone entirely different, someone powerful, proud, and curious. By the end of the month, Ethan realized that Viral had changed him. The palace no longer felt intimidating. The customs no longer seemed insurmountable. He had learned patience, observation, and the value of perspective. And more than anything, he had learned that sometimes Misunderstandings could lead to the most extraordinary journeys, because he was beginning to see, clearer than ever, that Princess Zhyrna was no ordinary royal. And he was no ordinary human. Together, they were something neither world had expected. For now, the adventure was no longer about escaping or correcting a mistake. It was about learning, understanding, and discovering the unexpected connection between two beings from different worlds. Ethan smiled, glancing at Zhyrna as she studied the glowing flowers. Somehow he knew that the true challenge and the true reward was only beginning. The grand hall of Viral Palace was filled with Valari nobles, their faces carved in masks of pride and skepticism. At the center stood Princess Zhyrna, tall and radiant, her violet eyes glinting with determination. Beside her, Ethan Cole stood quietly, dressed in ceremonial robes, feeling both out of place and strangely at ease. The council meeting had been called after rumors spread that the princess was allowing a human to influence her decisions. Whispers of scandal and disapproval filled the palace, and some nobles questioned her judgment, fearing the alliance with humans would weaken the empire. Ethan felt a shiver of tension as he looked around the hall. Hundreds of eyes were on him, some curious, some hostile. He straightened his shoulders. Whatever happened next, he had to trust Zhyrna's wisdom. "Princess Zhyrna," began Elder Korath, the oldest council member, his voice like grinding stone. "It has come to our attention that you are entertaining an unusual companion, a human, one who does not understand our ways. How can you allow such influence?" Zhyrna's gaze did not waver. "Elder Korath," she said firmly, "it is not influence I allow, but understanding. Humans are different from us, yes, but in their difference they show strengths we often overlook." A murmur ran through the hall. Some nobles frowned. Others whispered to their neighbors. Elder Korath's lips pressed into a thin line. "You speak of strengths," he said. "But what do humans offer that the Valari have not perfected over centuries? They are fragile, short-lived, and yet you place trust in one?" Zhyrna stepped forward, her voice rising with quiet fire. "Fragile, yes. Short-lived, yes. Yet their minds see what ours often blind to. Their hearts feel what ours sometimes forget. And the human before me, Ethan Cole, has shown patience, courage, and honesty beyond what many of you possess. He does not fear me. He does not flatter me. He challenges me, in ways that make us better." The council hall erupted in whispers and low gasps. Ethan felt his chest tighten, unsure if he should speak. But Zhyrna's eyes met his, and he saw the unspoken trust and courage there. "You will not let this cloud your judgment, Princess," Elder Korath said. "You risk the honor of the crown." Zhyrna took a deep breath. "The honor of the crown is not in obedience to fear. The honor of the crown is in choice, in wisdom, and in seeing value where others do not. I choose to honor the truth I see in this human. And that choice is mine alone." The hall fell silent. A few nobles shifted uncomfortably, while others whispered among themselves. Ethan could feel the weight of her words, but also the strength behind them. After a long pause, Elder Korath spoke again, his tone softer, less certain. "Perhaps there is merit in your perspective, Princess, but the human remains unknown. How can we trust him with the future of Viral?" Zhyrna's violet eyes softened, yet their fire remained. "Trust is earned through actions, not appearances. Ethan has shown patience, understanding, and respect. He has helped bridge gaps between our people. That is more than many here have done. That is trust." Ethan swallowed hard, realizing that Zhyrna had defended him not as a human, but as someone whose character mattered. He nodded slightly, grateful, but knowing the council's judgment was still far from certain. Over the next few days, Zhyrna worked tirelessly to show the council that humans had value. She organized demonstrations of human problem-solving, their empathy and their creativity. Ethan was amazed to see how his simple ideas, ways to improve palace organization, small innovations for trade, even humorous performances to lift morale, captured the attention of even the most skeptical nobles. One afternoon, she led a demonstration in the palace courtyard. Ethan helped guide artisans and palace staff in constructing a series of floating bridges, structures designed for Valari festivals, but simplified to show human ingenuity. The bridges shimmered in sunlight, held together by carefully calculated balance and human logic. Elder Korath and the council watched in awe. Some whispered that it was elegant. Others admitted that the solution was clever, simple, and effective. Ethan realized that humans with their practical minds could offer perspectives that even centuries of Velari tradition had overlooked. Jirna turned to him afterward, her eyes bright. "See, human? You are not weak, you are remarkable." Ethan laughed softly. "Remarkable for building bridges, literally." Jirna's violet eyes sparkled. "And metaphorically." The weeks passed, and Jirna and Ethan spent more time together, exploring Viral's vast library, observing the palace's artisans, and even taking walks under the twin moons. During these moments she challenged him, teased him, and sometimes scolded him, but always with subtle respect that made Ethan strive to be better. One evening, as they walked along a quiet terrace, Jirna spoke softly. "You have changed something here, Ethan. Not only the Council's opinion, but mine as well. Humans are unpredictable, yet they endure. They see what we ignore, and they make me question myself." Ethan looked at her, curiosity and caution in his eyes. "Question yourself?" "Yes," she said, her voice low. "I am expected to follow tradition, to obey customs, but you remind me that choice is powerful. Choice is freedom. Choice is what makes us alive." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to say something, but words failed him. Instead, he simply nodded, letting silence carry the weight of his agreement. As their bond grew, so did the tension among the nobles. Some openly opposed Jirna, arguing that humans should remain outsiders. Others began to whisper that perhaps the princess's judgment was indeed wiser than they had feared. One day, Ambassador Rethal approached Ethan quietly. "You must understand, human," he said, his tone cautious, "that the princess is walking a fine line. Some here do not approve. You must be careful." Ethan nodded. "I know. I'm not trying to interfere. I just want to help in the ways I can." Rethal studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Perhaps that is enough." Jirna, meanwhile, had taken to including Ethan in more private discussions. She asked his opinions, listened to his suggestions, and sometimes even debated him. The human perspectives he offered were often unconventional, yet insightful. And slowly, the council began to see the value in these ideas. One night, under the twin moons, Jirna turned to Ethan. "You will not leave," she said softly. A hint of command in her tone. Ethan blinked. "Princess, I thought my presence might cause problems." "You misunderstand," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your presence is necessary. You remind me that strength is not in power alone. It is in courage, honesty, and persistence, and you embody that." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. "Princess, I do not speak," she interrupted gently. "Just listen. That is enough." In that moment, Ethan realized that the misunderstanding that had begun this journey, the phrase that had accidentally bound him to Jirna, was no longer a mistake. It had become a bridge between worlds. A bridge built on respect, trust, and the simple, honest qualities that humans possessed. Days later, the council held a formal vote. One by one, the nobles cast their judgment. Some reluctantly approved, seeing the wisdom in Jirna's decisions. Others accepted the human perspective with caution. A few remained skeptical, but even they could not deny the effectiveness of Ethan's insights and the princess's unwavering resolve. When the vote was complete, Jirna turned to Ethan, her violet eyes shining. "You see, human? Even when others doubt, truth and integrity prevail. Even when worlds differ, understanding can create unity." Ethan smiled, feeling both pride and humility. "Princess, I didn't expect this. I thought I would be in trouble forever." Jirna laughed softly. "Perhaps it began as trouble, but it has grown into something far greater. We are learning, both of us, and in learning we create strength." Ethan looked at her, realizing that Viral had changed him. The palace no longer felt intimidating. The customs no longer seemed impossible. And the princess, she was no longer distant. She was someone he respected, admired, and, he realized with a quiet thrill, cared for deeply. As they walked through the gardens that night, under the glow of the twin moons, Ethan understood something clearly. This was not just a test of diplomacy. It was a journey of hearts, minds, and worlds, and somewhere deep inside he felt a spark of excitement. Because humans, he reminded himself, had a way of surviving even the strangest, most impossible situations. The twin suns of Viral were setting, casting long beams of golden light across the palace terraces. The air shimmered with the colors of the palace gardens, and the soft hum of energy from the floating sculptures filled the halls. Ethan Cole stood at the edge of the terrace, gazing at the horizon. Soon he would be allowed to return to Earth, to the life he had known before this strange, extraordinary adventure began. But he did not want to leave. Not yet. Princess Zhirna appeared beside him, her violet eyes catching the last rays of the suns. She was radiant, her silver robes flowing gently in the breeze, and yet there was something different about her expression. Soft, thoughtful, almost vulnerable. "You are leaving," she said quietly. Ethan turned to her, trying to read her expression. I am, Princess. My mission here is complete. I've learned, You have done more than learn," she interrupted, stepping closer. "You have changed my world, Ethan. Not just the council, not just the palace, but me. You have shown me that strength is not only in titles, crowns, or power. Strength is in courage, honesty, and heart, and you have all of that." Ethan swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. "Princess, I never expected any of this. I came here as a diplomat to negotiate trade and peace. I didn't know I would become part of my life," she finished for him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Yes, you are part of my life now, and I will not let you leave without acknowledgement." Ethan's heart raced. "Acknowledgement?" Zhirna nodded. "You said words once without knowing their meaning. Words that bound you to me, human, and now it is time to speak them properly, in our ways." "In yours," Ethan's mind raced. He had been careful, patient, trying to respect her world, but now at this moment there was no way to hide. He had learned, he had adapted, and somewhere in his heart, he realized that he did not want to leave. "Princess," he said finally, his voice steady though his heart pounded, "I would be honored to stand by your side." Zhirna's eyes widened slightly, then softened. A brilliant, warm smile spread across her face. "You speak the words with full understanding. And that is enough." A hush fell over the terrace as the attendants and palace staff appeared quietly, witnessing the moment. The princess reached out her hand. Ethan took it, feeling a warmth that was almost unreal. "You have chosen," she said softly, her violet eyes holding his, "and I accept your choice. This bond is ours by our words, our actions, and our hearts." Ethan felt a surge of relief and joy. The months of misunderstanding, lessons, and awkward encounters had led to this. The bond that had begun with a simple phrase had grown into something real, profound, and shared. The palace erupted in celebration. Lights glowed brighter, floating banners swayed in the energy currents, and soft music from the palace artisans filled the air. The council, once skeptical, now bowed and nodded in respect. Even Elder Korath, the most rigid of the nobles, approached Ethan and inclined his head. "You have proven yourself," he said quietly. "Humans are, indeed, remarkable. And the princess, she has chosen wisely." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "Thank you, Elder Korath. I hope to continue learning and serving in whatever ways I can." Zhirna smiled at him, pride and warmth in her eyes. "And you will. Together we will strengthen the bonds between our worlds. Together we will show that understanding, respect, and courage can overcome even the oldest doubts." Over the next few days, preparations began for a ceremonial acknowledgement. A formal celebration of the bond between Ethan and Zhirna, and the alliance between humans and the Valari Empire. Artists decorated the palace with glowing lanterns, floating ribbons, and shimmering flowers. Music filled every corridor, and the palace gardens were transformed into a breathtaking spectacle of light and color. Ethan walked through the preparations with Mira Valen at his side. "I have to admit," she said, shaking her head, "I never imagined your diplomacy would end like this." "Not in a million years." Ethan chuckled softly. "Neither did I, but somehow, it feels right." Mira raised an eyebrow. "Right? It feels like chaos wrapped in glitter." Ethan laughed. "Maybe, but it's our chaos." The day of the ceremony arrived. Nobles from across Viral, ambassadors from other worlds, and palace staff gathered in the grand courtyard. Zhirna appeared first, her silver robe sparkling in the twin suns' light. Ethan followed, his ceremonial attire simple by Valari standards yet elegant. The ceremony began with the lighting of the twin moon lanterns, each representing the bond between worlds. Zhirna took Ethan's hand, and together they walked forward, speaking the vows in both Valari and human language. "I, Ethan Cole," he said, voice strong and clear, "stand by you, Princess Zhirna, Not by obligation, not by mistake, but by choice. I will honor, respect, and support you, and together, we will face the challenges of our worlds. Zyrna's eyes shone with pride. And I, Zyrna of the Valari Empire, accept your choice. I will stand with you, learn with you, and together we will forge understanding, trust, and friendship between our peoples. The crowd erupted in applause. Banners swirled, music soared, and the floating lanterns cast shimmering reflections across the courtyard. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of belonging he had never known. He had come to Viral as a visitor, uncertain and afraid. Now he was part of something greater, a bond that bridged worlds. After the ceremony, Zyrna led Ethan to a quiet balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The twin moons were rising, casting silver light over the glowing flowers. She turned to him, her expression tender. "You have changed me, Ethan," she said softly. "Not because of your words alone, but because of your heart. You have shown me that choice is powerful, that courage matters, and that even the smallest actions can create great change." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of their journey. "Princess, you have changed me too. I came here to learn about your world, but I've learned about myself, about humans, about courage, respect, and love, I think." Zyrna's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Love, yes. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all." In the following weeks, Ethan and Zyrna worked together to strengthen the alliance between humans and Valari. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchanges began, and joint projects in science, art, and education flourished. Ethan's human perspective offered solutions and ideas that had never been considered, and Zyrna's leadership ensured that those ideas were implemented with respect for Valari traditions. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Zyrna stopped and looked at Ethan. "There is something you must understand, human," she said. "You're not only my partner in ceremony, but my partner in purpose. Together we show our peoples that differences can be bridges, not barriers." Ethan nodded. "I understand, Princess, and I want to do my best every day." "You already have," she said softly, "and that is why you are more than just a visitor. You are part of this world now. Part of me." Ethan felt a warmth he could not describe. For months he had navigated misunderstandings, cultural differences, and the daunting challenge of a royal palace. Now standing beside Zyrna, he realized that all of it had led to this moment, where two worlds could meet through respect, understanding, and choice. The final day of his stay arrived, and it was time to return to Earth. Ethan stood on the shuttle platform, his heart heavy but full. Zyrna approached him, her violet eyes bright with emotion. "You do not leave as you came," she said. "You leave as someone who belongs not just to Viral but to me." Ethan took her hands in his. "Princess Zyrna, I will carry this bond, this understanding wherever I go, and I will return. I promise," she smiled, a mixture of joy and pride. "And I will wait, not as a princess bound by duty, but as someone who has chosen and been chosen in return." As the shuttle lifted, Ethan gazed down at the palace, the gardens, the glowing lanterns, and the twin moons. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Humans had been underestimated, doubted, and dismissed. Yet here he was, standing on the threshold of two worlds united by understanding, courage, and heart. He looked at Zyrna, watching from the palace balcony, and thought quietly, humans may be simple, fragile, and brief in lifespan, but they were extraordinary. They could learn, adapt, and create bonds that even centuries of tradition could not break. And in that moment, Ethan understood the truth of the Valari words he had once stumbled through. Sometimes, a single choice, a single honest word, could change the fate of worlds. As the shuttle disappeared into the stars, Ethan smiled, knowing that this was not the end of his journey. It was the beginning of something far greater, a promise beyond worlds, a bond between human and princess, and a bridge between two civilizations that had once feared difference but now celebrated it. For the first time in his life, he felt truly at home. Not on Earth, not on Viral, but in the space between worlds, where courage, heart, and understanding met.